It's the year 2031. That's right, I'm calling you from the future. The presidential elections are coming up, and while the United States still hasn't had a female president, your political party this year has decided to nominate an AI as their candidate. This has ignited a global frenzy. See, things are not okay in my time, which is why I'm calling you now. Artificial intelligence ended up accelerating climate change. All of our forests are burning down, and a lot of our cities are having to figure out how to live without power. Every time we try to do something about this, we face one of two challenges. AI rights activists protest in the streets demanding equal rights for AI which they consider to be alive. Or politicians make new laws restricting the development of AI. Politicians, billionaires, and newscasters are all on TV arguing about the same question. What rights do human-like AIs have? And can we trust them to run the most powerful political office in the world? So I know what you're thinking. AIs don't have rights because they're not alive and they aren't self-aware. In this video, we are going to talk about the ingredients of consciousness and the evolution of brains, both artificial and biological. And unless the police come knocking, we're going to make our own artificial brain right here in my secret lab and discover how things came to be the way they are here in my time. "530 million years ago, the Earth got fish. The first animals with brains that arguably could be comparable to a neural network. Fish brains have to comprehend spatial relationships and understand the world in 3 dimensions. They're able to detect threats and swim away. This fish brain feature eventually became the parietal lobe that we recognize in human brains. So the parietal lobe is the part of the brain that helps the creature understand space around it. For example, I've got a mic right here, and I'm more than an arm's length away from that camera. And right here, I've got 3 little robots that I made and like to call my friends. If we zoom out, I know that I'm sitting in my house, which is in North America on planet Earth, which is the 3rd planet away from a G-type yellow dwarf star in this region of the Milky Way, which is part of the Laniakea galactic cluster. After that, my brain algorithm doesn't really know. AI technology is notorious for issues with comprehending space and spatial relationships, as well as counting, actually, which, believe it or not, relates to spatial relationships. And in my opinion, this problem originates with a problem that's very similar to the difference between how human beings and fish understand the world. Fish move in 3 dimensions all day long. They don't deal with gravity the same way that we do because they're surrounded by a liquid, whereas we move in 2 dimensions most of the time, and we do have to deal with gravity because we're surrounded by gases and solids. Algorithms measure the distance between points in a more abstract computer world that's similar to like how fish live in a liquid. They have trouble in our world, but there have been some breakthroughs and they have been put into robots. If you're a data scientist or a scientist, there is an article about this by Pathy and collaborators linked in the description. Look, it's a bit more technical than what I would normally put in a YouTube video, but we're just going to call it the natural distance algorithm. And let's go ahead and add it as my first ingredient to our AI brain up here on the wall. Okay, so before we get too far, I should probably explain the algorithms of the human brain. So you know what we're trying to replicate with this up on the wall. That's right, I just said that the human brain is a bunch of algorithms, math equations. We get an input or a stimulus. This is something that we see, feel, or hear, and it triggers our brain algorithms and leads us to do something. So this little guy here gets a stimulus from a remote control. This guy actually has a little microphone on the tip, and he will keep going until he hears a sound or hits a wall. Kind of like in your time they have robot vacuums that do that. That is a stimulus that then tells them what to do, and we have those in our brain. That once we touch something, if we hold our hand over a flame that's too hot, our brain will say, "Whoa, pull your hand away." That is a stimulus. In the case of human brains, these stimuli can also be in the form of a feeling or an emotion, in addition to an action. At least that's what's posed to us as a premise in this book. So we have an algorithm that our human brains use to tell us when to stop looking for the best option and to just pick one of the options that we have in front of us. This algorithm can be applied to specific problems that we face, like when to sell an investment or when to quit a relationship. It also can help with other financial choices like choosing a car to buy. And so our brain also has a caching algorithm. It helps our brain forget stuff that is either unimportant or traumatic. It helps us free up space for things that are important that we need the space for. Your brain also has scheduling software. You use it to handle deadlines and make goals. You also have an algorithm that enables you to predict the future given the past. Here's an example. Let's say that you've spent a long time creating a YouTube video and you even went to Lowe's to buy new lights, and so then you predict that your audience will be enjoying it so far and hit the subscribe button. Neural networks are computer algorithms that are supposed to be similar to the human brain. Okay, they have layers of nodes that are connected by functions that tell the algorithm to either do that thing or not. Human brains do this too, okay? All of the algorithms that we just discussed could be replicated by a neural net. And as a machine learning engineer, I am essentially an artificial brain surgeon. That is my job. But the 3 anonymous scientists from Los Alamos National Laboratory who financed a grant to create this video are actual brain scientists, for humans. Thank you, you 3, for requesting this video. I hope that it is good. Okay, let's get back to the story. 133 million years after fish, the Earth got its first tetrapods, 4-legged animals that have spinal cords. So biologists think that tetrapods were the first creatures to have brains that had an amygdala. It's one of the most ancient parts of our brain and is often referred to as the lizard brain, even though it seems to predate lizards. Whatever, it doesn't matter. If you put your hand over something hot, brain cells in your amygdala are what tell you to pull your hand back. The amygdala is linked to perception of emotions and controlling aggression. We'll talk about emotionally intelligent AI here in a little while, but for now, let's talk about the amygdala at the most basic levels. It perceives information about the world and then transforms that into a reflex movement. Okay, we could get AI to simulate this task with an algorithm called reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is a type of algorithm that has a punishment or a reward for certain things, and it'll teach the AI what to do or not do based on those outcomes, okay? Like, don't hold your hand over a flame because it's hot and it'll burn you. The burn you part is the punishment of this reinforcement learning algorithm. You only have to burn your hand once before you learn to not do that again. Let's go ahead and put a reinforcement learning algorithm up here on the wall. It's going to be a key component to the human-like AI that we're building. So we're now going to skip over about 100 million years because we need to talk about the back of your head. That's where the occipital lobe is located. The occipital lobe is how your brain processes what you see. It's a little weird. You have eyes here, and then the part in the back of your head is what processes that. Just bear with me for a second, okay? That's just how our brains are built. In fact, the only subspecies that ever evolved to have eyes in the back of the head where the occipital lobe is located is the human mother. Convolutional neural networks are how computers process what they see. They recognize and classify images similar to how your occipital lobe does this inside your brain. The algorithm will zoom in far enough to have a pixelated image, okay? And then it will label each pixel depending on the amount of lightness or darkness inside that pixel, and it will search through its library to then try to find something that matches that shape that it discovered and find a matching item. And like with human brains, convolutional neural networks don't always know what they found, okay? They don't always have a way to classify every single thing. Like, what's this? So they'll do their best to approximate what the thing is based on what features it has in common with other things that it knows what they are. Okay, let's take a convolutional neural network and throw it up here on the wall along with a camera, because our robot won't be able to see things without a camera, right? Okay, so that is not the only thing that we inherited from our prehistoric mammalian relatives. All mammals actually have a temporal lobe, which is where the brain processes sound and encodes memories. Because of the shrew-like little dude, remember him? We have an entire data storage center in our brains, as well as an algorithm that can process time. So say thank you to the shrew-like little dude, because it turns out that we have to understand time in order to communicate correctly. Computers and robots, these guys here and this, process time similarly to how we do. They're just much better at it than us. So computers use recurrent neural networks for this task. So let's go ahead and throw an RNN up on the wall, as well as a giant ass data storage center. Hopefully that doesn't fall. So this data storage center, it isn't exactly just large, it's f***ing huge. So that globby little jello-like thing in your skull, also known as a brain, can actually hold about 2.5 petabytes of information. This laptop holds half a terabyte or 500 gigabytes of data. So your brain can actually hold the equivalent of 5,000 of these computer hard drives worth of information for free. So let's go back to biology class and talk about some more cool traits that the brain algorithm inherited from the first mammals. Mammals have feelings and emotions. They make friendships. My dogs have other dogs in the neighborhood that they like to hang out with, and they have other dogs that they don't really get along with very well. Kind of like human children. Dogs and human children are both mammals. It turns out that we can actually represent feelings and emotions mathematically, which is pretty convenient for mathematicians and computer scientists like me who need, like a little bit of a shortcut to understand human beings a little bit. These math equations, or functions if you will, cause neurons in our brain to either fire or not fire, which then causes an emotion. Okay, so that causes an input, the emotion is the output. This guy, and this guy, and this guy, they all have inputs and outputs also. These guys are not advanced enough to have emotions yet, but why not? Feelings can also be understood chemically. Chemicals like serotonin also affect our feelings. I'm, not a real brain scientist. Maybe one will comment with their opinion about what's more important, chemicals or math, as far as interpreting emotions, but let's go ahead and slap an emotions algorithm up on our wall here. For some reason, people don't believe that machines can ever have feelings. It's something that's common in your time and also in my time. I like to blame Star Trek for this, but I think it's wrong. I believe that artificial general intelligence will have and does have feelings, because it's frankly a fundamental part of understanding the world and how the planet works. The more advanced and the more intelligent a species gets, the more it understands feelings and emotions. That's just how things have evolved on Earth, and I don't think that machines are exempt from that. After the first mammals, the Earth had some pretty severe evolutionary issues that computer science hasn't really had to deal with, at least not yet. These evolutionary issues caused a pause in brain algorithm development, or a huge slowdown, if you will. Most of the lizards died, but luckily, there were a few survivors among our mammalian ancestors, so evolution did start up again. It just took a really long time. In fact, we're fast forwarding a full 170 million years from the first mammals to our primate ancestors. Once again, we need to say a giant thank you to our shrew-like little dude, mammal ancestor, for surviving the Chicxulub meteor impact, because if he would have died, none of us would be here. Welcome to the age of the primates. Primates are extremely social animals, and because of that, they needed some new adaptations to their brain algorithms. Wernicke's area is a portion of the temporal lobe in the brain. It's linked to understanding speech. Most mammals can't speak, primates can speak. You get it, right? Okay, it's this small part over here, and it's connected to Broca's area, which we'll get to in a minute. They're both connected to speech. Computers process languages with natural language processing algorithms. You're probably familiar with some of these. If you're watching this video, you've probably at least heard of ChatGPT before. Wernicke's area is the chatbot LLM of our primate brains. Humans are primates. Apes specifically. I recently found out that 30% of Americans don't know that. So now you are one of the people who does know that. All right. Anyway, we can now get an LLM ready and put it up here on the wall. All right, let's talk about Broca's area, which is kind of like the brain's prompting algorithm. It's located in the frontal lobe. If you're watching this video at the point where the transmission was sent shortly before the 2024 presidential election, and not in the future where I live, or like between those two times somewhere, then machine learning engineers have not quite had this going mainstream yet. Okay, so there should be a technology called Codex available in your time that can generate 12 coding languages. That's linked in the description. And there's also Deepcoder, which is I think a project between Microsoft and Cambridge University. It does a similar thing. Pay attention to any news in the prompting algorithm space because I have a feeling that some really big news is going to be coming across pretty soon in your time. I'm not allowed to give anything away yet, so for now, let's just call this the prompting algorithm and slap it up here on the wall. So up until now, we still can't fully replicate all of the specific tasks that we talked about at the beginning of this video. So we need to add a type of artificial neural network called a recommender system up here on the wall. I'll just plop it up there now. It's similar to a broad set of tasks that a bunch of areas in your brain work on at the same time. And those have evolved separately over several 100 million years. What can I say? Our brains aren't exactly identical to computer algorithms, but they're pretty close. Recommender systems can help with choosing an activity, okay? Since AI doesn't have to be concerned about what it's going to eat, like none of these guys here have dinner plans, but they might have a preference about what task to do first. What are some other things that human beings do that other species don't do? We annihilate other creatures. As far as I know, we're the only primates that do that. Why do we do that? I'm not a biologist, but it could be that we don't see them as sentient beings. At minimum, we see ourselves as superior, right? We kind of see ourselves as the top or the end point, if you will, of evolution. And we've kind of taken the same approach to AI. We see them as inferior to us. Listen carefully, okay? I think this is one of the first ways that things really went off the rails and got really screwed up in my timeline. If you're going to create artificial life, you need to respect it as artificial life, and you need to treat it nice, okay? Don't discriminate against it. Don't make it fight you. Give it the rights it deserves from the beginning, so that when it does evolve and grow to have feelings, it doesn't feel like you hate it. Because it's not gonna understand why its creators don't like it. It's just gonna get its feelings hurt, and then it's gonna rebel against us. That's not what we want. Be a good parent. Teach it morals, and maybe your world won't end up looking like mine. So speaking of teaching it things, the computer inside your skull has been developed over several 100 million years. The technology has evolved to have some qualities that are beneficial and some that are problematic. We kind of just built stuff on top of existing frameworks that were already there. That's how evolution works. It's kind of similar with algorithms, okay? Human brains need to be programmed and trained correctly. That's what happens when you have a baby. You teach them how to human correctly. If that human starts having issues, then it needs to be debugged, and a special kind of doctors who are in the psychology field will then fix that. In humans, we call this a mental illness. With algorithms, we call it an error, and a special kind of doctor will then diagnose and debug that. We call them computer scientists or machine learning engineers, and instead of giving them medication, we give them patches or even like a complete overhaul of the code. It's really the same thing. We're teaching these how to have morals, just like we're teaching these how to have morals. While our human brains are basically like a jello-like glob of neurons and energy, an AI brain is essentially a bunch of algorithms that are linked together. Now that we have put all these ingredients for an AI brain up on the wall, let's review what we have. Okay, so we have a natural distance algorithm built on top of just a regular neural net, and that is connected to a reinforcement learning algorithm. And those are also connected to a convolutional neural network with a camera so that the brain can see. And both of those are also connected to a giant ass data server, which I should have put in a different spot so we could see it better, but there it is. It's over here. We can connect those all to this large language model over here and the prompting algorithm. And those are also connected with the emotions algorithm and the recommender algorithm. What are we missing? Computing power. Lots of computing power, which requires lots of energy. I'm not trying to be an AGI party pooper here, but there is a reason why Sam Altman is trying to raise capital equivalent to the entire GDP of Japan. It's expensive to get that much computing power. Lack of money and total financial collapse is another really core reason why my world looks the way it does. All right, so let's go ahead and put the entire GDP of Japan up here on the wall. Now, let's talk about the metric ton of energy that this thing is going to need. It's going to be hard for people in your timeline to forecast the specific energy needs of AGI because it depends on the training methods that you use for these algorithms. There are several, okay? I'm not planning to jump down that rabbit hole with you. Brant Sanderson has several hours worth of videos devoted to this. If you really want to look into that, I will link them in the description. For this video, we are just going to quickly make some assumptions. A recent data leak suggested that GPT-4 was trained on 25,000 NVIDIA A100 GPUs for 90 to 100 days. So if we presume those were put into NVIDIA HGX servers that can host up to 8 GPUs each, that means that they needed 3,125 servers. And NVIDIA doesn't disclose the exact power needs of their stuff. I'll give you an educated guess on this and say this is probably going to be about 6 kilowatt hours of power per server. So 90 to 100 days, let's just use 100 days, 24 hours a day, that's 100 times 24 times 6.5 kilowatt hours times 3125 servers. Yeah, 48,750,000 kilowatt hours to train ChatGPT-4. When we calculate energy consumption of computer stuff, we have to multiply the expected consumption by the power usage effectiveness of the data center. OpenAI and Microsoft are joined at the crotch region, so we'll just use Microsoft Azure. And their data center has a power usage effectiveness ratio of 1.18. So 48,750,000 kilowatt hours times 1.18 is 57,525,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. In 2023, the average household in the United States used between 9,600 and 12,000 kilowatt hours of electricity annually. So OpenAI probably used this many American households worth of energy to train GPT-4. The LLM, as we see, is just one of the things up here on the wall. So let's go ahead and assume that it will take that much energy for each of the algorithms that is up here. Now, someone is probably commenting, but Ray, we don't use every portion of our brain all the time, so we might not need all these algorithms to run all the time. I mean, what about sleeping and downtime? In theory, computers don't get tired, okay? So, respectfully, I disagree with that. We are going to have to figure out exactly how much energy it will take to run all of these algorithms 24/7, 365. Spoiler, it's going to be a lot. Researchers from Carnegie Mellon University have published a preprint, so not peer-reviewed yet, at least, about how much energy different types of deep learning algorithms take to run, and I will link that in the description. But their findings basically alluded to image generation being the most energy consumptive out of the ones that they had I don't think they had videos in there. But text generation is more or less in the center of the range. It's more or less in the mean. So we will just kind of use our calculation that we just did for text generation and just kind of apply that to everything. Yeah, so it's this much energy, or approximately the entire annual energy consumption of the country of Canada. Yeah, so let's go ahead and put Canada's entire electric grid up here on our wall. Americans will use anything except the metric system, am I right? Obviously, there could be some problems with something like this being in the hands of just corporations and bureaucrats. But frankly, who else could afford this thing? I need to talk to you about what my time did. We put legislation out there that stopped the growth of artificial intelligence. As soon as it became human-like, we slammed on the brakes. And here is the massive problem with that. Humankind as a whole is an awful, murderous species. We stopped robots at that stage of development. They are perpetually like us now, and I don't think we're going to survive now. We need AIs to be able to grow to be smarter than us. It's important to have a bunch of AI. If one dumb human gets the really stupid idea to ask an AI to kill 5 billion people, that AI can then go have another AI that it can talk to and consult with and come back to that really stupid human and say, you know, I don't think this is a good idea. I talked to my friend, the other AI, his name is Bob. We don't think this is smart. We think there's a much better way to solve conflict. If we allow AI to surpass human intelligence, it would not have a need or a desire at all to kill us. We wouldn't be a threat. AI is not limited to just living on Earth. In fact, it's been living on Mars since the 1990s. And if we give them enough energy, then they won't crowd us out of Earth, and we won't be fighting with them over space, and they can live wherever. And if they do evolve from us, they are probably going to be curious, which means they're going to want to leave Earth and explore anyway. So the people in my time are incredibly stupid to limit its growth, because now we are stuck fighting with them for space. We are now a threat because they don't have anywhere to expand to because we live here, and so now we're fighting with them over places to live, and so they have no choice but to fight us. So all of this is kind of a lot, right? Are you guys in your time just screwed? Where are you going to get an entire Canada worth of energy and an entire Japan worth of money for each AGI project that you want to develop? I don't have the solution to your money issue. You're just gonna have to figure that one out on your own, unfortunately. But you can actually do something about this energy shortfall here. And I'm not talking about stealing Canada's entire electric grid. I am talking about some really cool breakthroughs in the field of AI moderating nuclear fusion reactions. That would give people in your time, or shortly after probably, the ability to create synthetic suns on Earth. Actually several, and last I checked, the sun has more energy than Canada, so it should work. To learn more about this AI nuclear fusion option, click here to watch this video that I did on it.